Many of us feel the urge to complete the most challenging feat in Ready or Not, which is completing the entire game getting rank S in every single map. And after spending about 50 plus hours grinding every rank S in the game, I've picked up various tips along the way, many of which would have saved me a lot of time if I had known about it sooner. So without any further ado, here are the top 15 tips for grinding rank S in Ready or Not. We'll be going down the list starting from what I think is the least useful tip, working our way up onto what would have been the most useful tip had I known about these sooner. First off, the search and secure tip. This is the least useful tip because I believe pretty much everyone knows this by now, but upon getting rid of all suspects and civilians, a new command becomes available for your SWAT teammates, where you can order them to search and secure, and essentially what this does is it makes your SWAT team clear out the entire map of every single evidence, as well as restraining anyone that's left over, and all you really have to do is cross your arms and let them do the rest. Do beware though, they will not complete soft objectives for you, so you still need to figure those out. Next, we have a couple of useful settings. So Ready or Not has various different settings which can enhance your gameplay as well as make things easier for you, such as tweaking around your video settings to make visibility better for you on hard to see maps such as Rust Belt. But personally, I didn't mess around with video settings, so there isn't much I can recommend. What I can recommend, however, are these 3 little settings that you may have not known about. First off is separating yelling from interacting. By default, in Ready or Not, your F key is bound to both interacting with objects such as opening doors, as well as yelling at suspects and civilians to comply. But what you may have not known is you can actually separate these 2 key bindings, making it so you don't accidentally yell when you're stealthing behind an enemy, when really you're just trying to open up a door. Another great setting is the free lean setting. Make sure you put this in a comfortable button, as we'll be using this a lot. Personally, I use Control. More on this setting later on in this video. And last but not least, the most asked question in all of my videos, highlighting weapons. This is found under the accessibility tab, and it makes enemies' weapons glow when they're on the floor. Not only can you see weapons through the wall, allowing you to oftentimes realize a suspect has surrendered without you even peeking, as well as it makes picking up evidence much easier. And oh, before I forget to mention, I also have been asked what my FOV is, and I use 110 for the FOV. I do recommend increasing your FOV for better visibility. Next up is commanding suspects who have surrendered. This is something you must use as much as you can when going for rank S, as it's probably the tip that will save you the most times out of any of the tip in this list. However, a lot of people already know this, which is why it's so high up in the list. Once you've got a suspect, or civilian for that matter, who has surrendered, you can command that suspect to move towards you, no matter how far away they actually are, allowing you to stay behind cover and arrest them only when they're safe. You can also ask them to turn around, which the reason for using this is when the suspect is not facing you, they are far less likely to attempt to reach for the sidearm to try to kill you, so use this to your advantage. Now let's talk a little bit about our loadout. For this tip specifically, let's address the armor. What type of armor should you use and which material? So I've tried all of the different types of combinations, even the stab vest, which personally I completed mine jot only using that. No armor is of course never an option, really it's just for the memes and it offers you no advantage. The stab vest can be useful on maps like the Twisted Nerve, where you're dealing with a lot of enemies equipped with knives and weak weapons such as pistols. And the extra munitions can be quite useful as you've got a lot of people to deal with, but most of the times you're just better off with the other armors. The heavy armor is most people's choices, for the obvious fact that it gives you more survivability. Or does it? Personally, I don't like the heavy armor. Sure, the heavy armor will allow you to tank more shots to the arms, but the speed decrease for equipping it outweighs its benefits in my opinion. The slow speed will make it much harder for you to crack open doors and push enemies, leaving you far more vulnerable as you're a much slower moving target. And not just that, but the 2 slots decrease is painful to deal with. And lastly, I've never really felt much of a difference in how many shots I can take when comparing with the light armor, which is a good segue to talk about the light armor, which is my armor of choice. It's the best balance between having a large loadout, being really fast, as well as strong enough to take on several shots. But try them all and see which one you prefer. And as far as material goes, I'll admit, for most maps I just ran Kevlar as I never cared about the material as I thought it was mostly an immersion type thing. But actually, I was very wrong. As far as materials go, you'll likely want to use the Kevlar when clearing maps with enemies only equipped with weak weapons such as knives and pistols, but for most maps you'll want to stick with either ceramic or steel. So from my understanding, this is how it goes. Steel makes you slower, but also minimizes damage by a lot. Each shot you take to the steel armor takes a little bit of health away from you, but allow you to take far more shots than most. Ceramic, on the other hand, flat out takes 0 damage from several shots until it completely breaks. And then, when it does break, you're left with no armor. But also, you are a lot faster when equipped with that. And not just that, the SWAT AI can be equipped with different perks. And one of these perks is named the Armored perk, which apparently only benefits ceramic materials and not steel. So overall, I'd say stick with the light armor with the ceramic material. While still on the subject of loadouts, let's talk a little bit about the taser. When should you use it? And in my opinion, the answer is never, with the exception of a few maps. There are a couple of maps, if I'm not mistaken, specifically the Hospital and the Neon Club, where there are some suspects that do not ever surrender no matter what you do to them. Shooting them with the VKS, beanbags, stinger grenades, it doesn't matter. None of that makes them surrender. The only utility that can possibly force them to surrender is the taser, which has a 100% surrender rate if the target is not resistant to tasers. You can still get unlucky enough that these suspects are resistant to tasers, but more often than not, you'll be able to force them to surrender just by tasing them. Another piece of loadout that we can't forget to mention is the mirror gun. This tool is by far the strongest tactical gear you can utilize when going for rank S solo. With mirror guns, you simply gain sort of like a wall hack, as long as you're patient enough, that is. You could essentially not only peek through every door in the game, well, pretty much every door in the game, but what some of you may not know is that you can even peek around corners with them, as well as peeking over objects that are slightly taller than your character. This tool is simply indispensable when going for rank S, unless you intend to intentionally make your runs harder for yourself. I personally never played a single map without the mirror gun. It's simply that strong. Now what about grenade? We've got 3 types of grenades in Ready or Not. Which ones should we stick with? First off, the flashbang. The flashbang is far more inferior than the other 2 options, so we won't even talk about it. The stinger grenade has a wider radius than the flashbang, stunning suspects at a much farther range, and most importantly, is capable of stunning even suspects utilizing anti-flash masks due to its rubber ball. I believe it also stuns suspects for longer, but don't quote me on that. And lastly, there's the CS gas grenade. This is my grenade of choice as the AoE is quite large. But not just that, but it's also able to gas out suspects out of hidden positions. And oftentimes, a suspect will even rotate out of their position and run towards the gas and gas themselves off, essentially giving you a free arrest for no good reason. I also like the fact that everyone in the gas starts cuffing, which allows you to listen to how many people got gassed out before you even enter the room. And lastly, on the subject of your own loadout is the weapon, VKS, TPL, or the Beanbag Shotgun. The TPL is out of the question here. It is far more inferior than the VKS, it has worse range and far less ammo than the VKS. So the toss-up is between the VKS and the Beanbag Shotgun. Overall, I prefer the shotgun. You can pretty easily get rid of a suspect with just 1 shot to the chest. But not just that, but they surrender almost immediately after yelling them after shooting them. Whereas with the VKS, they'll oftentimes run away cuffing way before they even surrender, and oftentimes put themselves in situations where it's extremely difficult for you to reach and arrest. The VKS, however, does have several advantages. It's a far better weapon for long ranges, it does AoE damage, meaning you can shoot at targets from around the corner without having to expose yourself, and it's a lot more efficient at dealing with running targets. Whereas with the Beanbag Shotgun, I find it extremely unforgiving as it's very difficult to hit sprinting targets. In my opinion, this will come down to the map. When you're playing a close quarters map such as the Brisa Cove or Twisted Nerve, I find the Beanbag Shotgun to be more effective, as you can stop a target immediately. The VKS will take several shots and/or seconds until the pepper actually starts hurting the target. But when you're playing long distance maps such as Port Hogan or the postal office, I'd recommend the VKS as it's a far safer choice to go with. Overall, I use the VKS the most, despite preferring the shotgun, as it's overall a more consistent weapon to deal with targets, despite its downsides. Now, while on the subject of these two weapons, let me tell you another great VKS tip a lot of people may not know. You know those really annoying situations where you're going solo and you've got two people to arrest and you're afraid one of them will just get up and shoot you in the head? Well, with the VKS you can prevent that. I only learned about this on the very last mission I played, but you can actually shoot on the ground next to the surrendering suspect and they will start cuffing. And in this state, when they're cuffing, they will never react by attacking you. Only after the cuff has cleared out, which will be long enough for you to arrest your targets. And by shooting the ground next to them, it does not count as unauthorized use of force, as you're not actually attacking them. It just so happens that they're in the range of the pepper, therefore are stunned by it. And now let's talk about free lean. I only learned about the potential of free lean several missions in. Free lean essentially allows you to peek much farther in any direction, and I mean any direction. I mean, you can literally get on your tippy toes and look over objects by using free lean and pressing W. You will be stationary when using free lean, but the use of free lean creates a wide variety of potential peeks. I utilize free lean every time I'm peeking in a room that I know a target is in. My body will be far less exposed and I can quickly peek an enemy much faster than just running into the room. You can also utilize free lean to crouch down really low to look under beds, to crouch down to protect yourself from gunfire, and even using free lean to look over ledges you wouldn't be able to look at otherwise. And as I said earlier in this video, put this keybind in something comfortable for you to press. For me, that was Control, as crouching is pretty useless in this game, so I just rebound it. And I found the default left alt for free lean to be really difficult to reach mid-game. Another big tip some people are not aware of is peeking doors versus opening them. This tip alone was one of the most controversial comments across my Rank S videos, as various players were under the impression I had been utilizing mods to make the suspects react less to me. When in reality, the suspects, such as in this situation you're seeing there in the background, don't actually hear when you peek open a door. By peeking a door and physically pushing it with your character, it is considered to make no sound to the enemy AI, allowing you to catch them off guard and lead to some pretty free arrests. Whereas, if you open the door, it seems like it's the loudest thing in the world, because every AI in the room will immediately turn and shoot you the second you open that door. While on the subject of suspects, let's talk about a few different suspect states. The suspects in Ready or Not have various states, from being completely unaware, to roaming around the map, to being in their alerted position. And this position is the one I want to talk about right now. When you mirror gun under a door or around a corner and you find a suspect in this position right here, you might as well turn around and leave. But seriously, when a target is in this alerted position, it has been stated by modders that in the files of this game, they will have a 0.1 second reaction time, which is at least twice as fast as most human beings. And not just that, but they have near perfect accuracy. So if you're planning on taking on a 1v1 versus the bot when they're in this state, then you're a goner. Now seriously, you may actually want to turn around and look for another way in. If you can't do that, or if you have a lot of utility still, then you have a few options to deal with these suspects. One is by peeking the door and grenading in. Another is by opening the door and trying to shoot the target's feet with a VKS, or maybe even C2ing a door to stun the target if they're far enough to not die from it. As long as you don't try to dry peek it, then you've got a few options. But if you've only got a beanbag shotgun and peeking is your only way out, then seriously, just turn around. Now, as I had just said, there are several states the suspects can be in, and I feel that one of the most important ones we have to talk about is when they're in the surrendering state. Some AI are more likely than others to try to get up and get you with the sidearm. For example, in Brisa Cove, it feels like every single one of the AIs will try to do this at least once. And by the way, once is the key word here. If the target gets up and tries to shoot you with their sidearm and you're able to make them surrender again, you're pretty much good to go. They will not be getting up a second time. So if you've got 2 suspects to arrest and one has already gotten up from the surrendering state, then arrest the one that hasn't yet first, because the one that already did get up won't be doing so again. And another tip for this annoying second attempt from the suspects is they lock onto the position you were initially at when they start getting up. Meaning, if you just take 2 steps to the side when they start getting up, they'll shoot the wall behind you. So anytime you're going to arrest someone and they start getting up, just strafe to the side and you're good to go. And for the last 2 tips, this is the most game-changing tips for me, which made my rank S runs at least twice as easy. Use your SWAT team. I used to think they would just stand in your way, but if you utilize them properly, you can pretty much clear entire maps without even putting yourself in danger. First, I have to mention, every officer you carry in missions with you will carry an ability with them, many of which, even if you want to go solo, these abilities will still apply to you even if your SWAT team isn't near you. One tip to unlock these perks quickly is by farming very easy missions such as the gas station, that is, beating it 2 or 3 times, and your entire squad will have their abilities unlocked. And these abilities are extremely powerful. For example, the Nutritionist ability gives you and your team 25% extra health. And if you have 4 Nutritionists in your team, everyone has 35% more health. Most of these abilities stack on top of each other. For rank S runs, if you really want to min-max, what I would recommend is 2 pacifiers, which increases morale damage by non-lethal weapons by a whole 50%. And for the other 2, a combination of either 2 negotiators, 2 intimidators, or 1 of each. 2 intimidators increase morale damage by just your presence alone by 100%, and 2 negotiators increase morale damage by yelling at suspects by 50%. Having more than 2 in most abilities, by the way, will have diminishing returns, which is why I do not recommend having more than 2. Now, for a complete list of what each ability does, I'll link a very useful guide in the description box below for you guys to check out. And for the last tip is your officer's loadout. First off, for the weapon, the only one that works is the VKS. The DPL, as I said earlier, is far worse, and the Beanbag Shotgun in the hands of your teammates means they'll oftentimes kill suspects accidentally by shooting them in the head. So you're better off just equipping them all with VKSs. For the armor, give them all heavy armor with ceramic. The AI teammates always match your speed no matter what armor they're equipped with. So of course, we'll equip them with the best choices possible. For munition slots, we'll give them several pepper balls as well as a mix of CS gas grenades, stinger grenades, and C2 explosives across different bots, so you have a wide variety of choices when breaching in rooms. Make sure you get rid of all of their sidearm ammo so they don't swap to their sidearm when out of ammo and end up killing suspects, breaking your rank S runs. For tactical gear, never give them shields, as they'll equip their shields every time you ask them to breach into something and just die as they won't be able to fire back. Personally, I just give them battering rams or breach shotguns. This really doesn't matter that much. And for headgear, just give them all gas grenades, as they'll all be using VKS weapons, so you don't want them gassing out themselves. So that's it for the best tips for ready or not to rank S runs. I hope this will be useful to a lot of you guys. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.